You ever lose everything you thought made you a man? Not just the house, the cars, or the balance in your account, I mean the quiet things. The things you thought couldn't be sold because they lived inside you. Pride. Love. The belief that sacrifice meant something. Yeah, that's where my story begins. Before I continue the story, subscribe and tell us where you're listening from. 6 months ago, my wife's infection was killing her. The doctor said it was rare, aggressive, and curable, if you had $500,000 to burn. I didn't. But I sold everything that had a memory attached to my name. The house my father built, the cars I spent years working for, even the land my kids used to run across every weekend, gone. All because she looked at me with tears in her eyes and whispered, "Don't let me die." And I didn't. I fought. I borrowed. I crawled through humiliation and came out alive just long enough to sign the last hospital check. I thought we'd made it. I thought love had survived the storm. But when she walked again, she changed. The smile that used to melt me turned sharp. Cold. She stopped calling me, my love. She called me, you. And when I asked what was wrong, she laughed, that quiet, pitying laugh that turns men into ghosts. Then she said it. "I want a real man now." Just like that. As if all my sacrifices were a joke. As if the man who saved her life was the one who'd killed her happiness. The divorce came faster than her recovery. She took half of what was left, and the kids. Full custody. My lawyer said fighting would only drain me further. So, I didn't fight. I let the storm win. I ended up in a cheap motel at the edge of town. Room 16. Cracked tiles. Rusted shower head. A smell like bleach and broken promises. I sat on the bed, staring at the empty wallet on the table and the half bottle of whiskey beside it. The world had taken everything, but it hadn't taken the noise inside my head, the noise of that laugh. You know, they say grief makes people numb. But that night, I wasn't numb. I was awake. And that's when it happened. A knock. 3 slow, deliberate taps. Not the random thud of a drunk guest or housekeeping. No. This was measured. Calm. Like someone who knew I'd be awake. I froze. For a second, I thought maybe it was her. Maybe she'd come to twist the knife a little more. But when I opened the door, it wasn't her. It was a delivery guy, tall, wearing a black cap that shadowed his face. He didn't make eye contact. He just held out a box the size of a shoebox. "Room 16, he asked. "Yeah." "Sign here." His voice was flat, like an old recording. I signed without thinking, because when you've lost everything, you stop asking questions. You just move. When I looked up, he was already walking away. Not a glance back. I shut the door and placed the box on the bed. No return address. No sender name. Just my first name scrawled in black marker, Daniel. Inside, I found 3 things. A burner phone. A metal flash drive. And a small folded note. The note read. "You were generous once. Let's turn that generosity into something she can't laugh away. Watch the phone." That's it. No signature. No clue. Just words that hit like electricity. The phone buzzed once. A video loaded automatically. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen, heartbeat hammering in my chest. You ever get that feeling where curiosity is louder than fear? That's what it was. I pressed play. Grainy footage. My ex-wife. Laughing. Sitting in a restaurant I'd never been to, talking to a man across the table, her new, real man. Expensive suit, expensive smile. But that wasn't what got me. It was the voice behind the camera, whispering. "She's not who you think she is, Daniel. And he's not just her new man." Then the video ended. Screen went black. My reflection stared back at me, empty eyes, clenched jaw, rain dripping down the motel window like the world was trying to wash itself clean. For the first time in months, I didn't feel small. I felt focused. Someone out there knew my story. Someone had been watching. And whoever they were, they just handed me a match and pointed me toward the gasoline. I remember whispering to myself, "Don't do it." But my hands were already typing a reply into the phone. "Who are you?" I sent. No answer. Just 3 dots, then gone. A second later, another message appeared. "Patience, Daniel. Everything she took can be returned, piece by piece." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, phone in hand, replaying that video until dawn bled into the motel curtains. Every second of her laughter was a reminder. Every frame of that man's smile was a reason. And right then, I made a promise. No rage. No outburst. No drunken confessions on social media. If I was going to strike back, it wouldn't be loud. It would be silent. Calculated. I'd make her feel what I felt, not through pain, but through loss. Loss she wouldn't see coming until it was too late. I looked at my reflection in the glass and said it out loud, just to hear how it sounded. "You wanted a real man. You're about to meet one." The phone buzzed again. A new message. "Tomorrow. 9 p.m. check your email. The first step begins." I smiled for the first time since the hospital. Because now, the game had started. So if you're watching this and you've ever been betrayed, really betrayed, then listen closely. Revenge isn't rage. It's math. It's patience. It's art painted in silence. That night, I stopped being her savior. And I started becoming her reckoning. When people picture revenge, they picture fireworks, loud, messy, carnage for show. That's TV. Real revenge is accounting. It's ledgers and patience and 100 tiny transactions that add up to ruin. I learned that lesson in the first week after the phone. You don't start a reckoning by announcing yourself. You start by rebuilding an economy no one else noticed. Information, favors, hints, and leverage. I had none of the usual currency left, so I had to make it. First thing I did, I called Jonah. Jonah was the kind of friend you make in your 20s then forget about until you need him. He'd been a PI once, then a fixer, then the kind of man who knew where people hid things. He owed me a favor from a time I covered his debt when neither of us had credit. He owed me more in loyalty than he knew. We met in a cafe that still served espresso with attitude. He arrived with a hat pulled low and a crossword half solved, like he hadn't slept and didn't intend to start. I told him the truth, because there's power in facts, the surgery, the divorce, the laugh, the phone. I didn't say revenge out loud. I said accounting. "You want to go loud or you want it clean?" he asked, not looking up. "Clean," I said. "Invisible. Surgical. If the kids see it, we stop." He smiled like he'd been paid in good stories. "You always were dramatic." Jonah's first job was intelligence. Names. Dates. Patterns. Where she worked now. Who handled her finances. Who was the new man in the videos. A PI knows how to move without making noise, how to read a person's day like a blueprint. Within 48 hours, Jonah handed me a file, spreadsheets, receipts, calendar invites, a list of monthly donations to a charity I'd never heard of, and a photo of the man in the suit leaving a clinic 2 blocks from their weekend house. Information's useful, but leverage is better. Jonah knew someone at the hospital, a shift nurse who'd been careful with charts and sloppy with gossip. I had to convince her to help. You don't buy loyalty, you remind people what they already know about right and wrong. Her name was Maris. She smelled faintly of antiseptic and peppermint gum. She met me in the hospital chapel, which sounds like a weird choice until you realize it's neutral ground. Everyone goes there when they're lost and can't look at the ward. "I can't risk my job," she said the first time we spoke. "But I can't sleep knowing what I saw." What she'd seen, irregularities in the billing, a cancelled test that had been performed, a name on a ledger that didn't belong, a plastic surgeon's clinic billing for something labeled as post-op care that lined up with the dates of my wife's recovery. Not proof of malice, but a crack. Enough to slide a lever into. Maris gave me access to minor things, a scanned invoice, a nurse's note with a timestamp, a name I hadn't known to look for, Dr. Hargreaves. She whispered, "There are people who make medicine a business. If you want the mess cleaned, be careful who you accuse." Careful was my middle name now. I tucked each scrap into folders labeled with names I intended to use later. Every scrap was a stitch. Next, money. I didn't have the luxury of big bank transfers or shell companies. I had small trades, hustles of dignity. I sold a watch a friend had given me, took an online job doing late-night data entry for a firm that paid in cash via digital vouchers. Small, ugly things. But they bought anonymity, new emails, burner accounts, a rented P.O. box, and a modest hotel room near the charity's office that allowed me to watch without being obvious. I learned to move as if I had nothing to hide and everything to lose. The more I dug, the more complicated things became. Jonah found them, an email thread between my ex-wife and someone at the charity. Polite. Businesslike. But one message stood out. It referred to a grant and used the phrase, stability in transitions. That's bureaucratic for, we smooth reputations while money changes hands. I should have taken pure pleasure at the discovery. Instead, I felt something else, a dull ache that wasn't anger. A small, ugly question, was she laundering pain or being laundered herself? That question followed me like a shadow. The ledger told a story of donations and receipts, but ledgers could lie. People could be generous to wash guilt. People could be generous because they felt guilty. Or they could be generous because someone had convinced them to act out of fear. Each theory demanded its own proof. While I was chasing paper, I also had to build a mask that could get me into the places that mattered. The gala I'd seen in a membership photo, a charity fundraiser she attended annually, was my foot in the door. Invitations didn't just arrive, they were bought, traded, or earned. I decided to earn it. I became a volunteer, a quiet man at the check-in table for a month, greeting donors, learning names, watching patterns. Volunteers don't stick around forever, which made me unremarkable. I folded into the background, the perfect place to gather what you need. From the shadows, I learned the name of the gala's logistics manager, the time the VIPs arrived, the code word used by security for lost items. I learned what wine the man in the suit preferred and the way my ex-wife smiled when she wanted something from someone. People performed their lives like actors reading scripts. I learned the cadence of those scripts. One night, while rearranging centerpieces with a trembling hand and a steady head, I heard a hushed conversation between two women about a private auction. A rare piece, something that could be sold for hundreds of thousands if handled properly. The kind of thing that could tip an accounting balance if it moved to the right buyer and the right ledger. It was a small thing, maybe nothing at all. But these small things were currency. I saved it in my memory like a secret code. On the day I finally secured an invitation, issued to Daniel Walsh, volunteer coordinator, I felt both elation and a prehistoric fear. I had built a path into their circle by being boring, polite, and painfully ordinary. Nobody suspected the man who emptied bins and straightened place cards. But somewhere between the volunteer briefings and midnight smoke breaks, my hands trembled. Not from nerves about the gala. From the knowledge that every move I made could be a pebble that set off an avalanche. I had allies, Jonah, Maris, but allies could be turned, bribed, or broken. The truth was, the deeper you go, the more you realize you're playing with live wires. Before the gala, Jonah handed me one more file. A photograph of the man in the suit, but not from a video this time, a private portrait on a glossy page, the kind people use when they want the world to think of them as important. He was darker up close, not just in clothes but in posture. The caption read, Marcus Lang, investor, philanthropist, friend to the influential. Jonah looked me in the eye. You sure you want to pull this thread? I thought of the kids, of their small hands, of the way my daughter used to braid my hair when she was 5. I thought of every cheap motel and every paper receipt I'd kept like a priest with relics. Yes, I said. Pull it. Jonah nodded, but his nod wasn't triumph. It was a warning. You'll see things you don't expect. People hurt other people for reasons that aren't simple. Don't let your anger blind you. That line, don't let your anger blind you, I would later realize it was the only true kindness Jonah offered me. That night, I lay awake with my phone on the nightstand and the files spread next to it like a map charting the coast of a plan. I was no longer the man who woke to bills and hospital calls. I was a man who had catalogued the world's soft underbellies and intended to press them. Tomorrow, I'd go back to the gala, smile the smile of a volunteer, and watch them celebrate what they thought was a fresh start. I'd be patient. I'd be invisible. I'd be ready to trade the first piece of their certainty for another, smaller truth. And I'd keep the kids out of it, whatever it cost me. When you start balancing a ledger against a life, you must be willing to sacrifice the ease of your own certainties. That's when you know you're serious. That's when revenge stops being a performance and becomes a profession. Tomorrow night is the first real entry in my account. And when the first page turns, you'll see exactly how quiet a storm can be. You ever wear a mask so long it starts to fit better than your own skin? That's where I was. The volunteer badge on my chest said, Daniel Walsh, but under it, I was something else, a ghost moving through her world, collecting secrets like fingerprints. The gala was my first real field test. It wasn't just a party, it was a parade of egos disguised as generosity. Every handshake felt like a transaction, every smile an invoice waiting to be paid. I arrived 2 hours early under the pretense of setting up table cards, but really, I wanted to study the battlefield. Gold drapes. String quartet. Too much perfume. It smelled like money trying to hide guilt. And then she walked in. My ex-wife. The woman I'd bankrupted my soul for. She floated into the room on laughter and heels sharp enough to cut glass. Her new man, Marcus Lang, was beside her, tailored suit, smug confidence, the kind of charm that photographs well but rots fast in person. They didn't see me. Not really. People rarely noticed the ones carrying trays. I kept my head down, setting champagne flutes in perfect lines while the string quartet tuned. From that distance, she looked like the woman I'd married, same grace, same tilt of the head when she listened. But when Marcus whispered in her ear and she laughed, I saw it again, that laugh. The one from the video. The one that cost me sleep. Jonah's file on Marcus said, investor, philanthropist, international holdings. But it was the subtext that mattered, debt restructured 3 times, offshore transfers, connections to medical suppliers. He wasn't just her new lover, he was a vein that carried money through her charity and out the other side. They'd built an empire on something rotten, and tonight, I intended to taste it. I started small. At 7:45 p.m., I swapped 2 identical USB drives in the AV booth, one contained the official donor slideshow, the other held a silent passenger. A string of anonymized data Maris had helped me copy from the hospital's billing system. It wouldn't expose anything yet, just store metrics in the background while it played. Like I said, patience. By 8:30, the hall was full. Glasses clinked. Flashbulbs popped. The host introduced Marcus as a man redefining compassion in finance. The crowd applauded like trained seals. I positioned myself near the catering station, within earshot but invisible. When Marcus took the stage, his voice oozed sincerity. We're not just changing lives, he said. We're protecting them. Protecting. That word burned. Halfway through his speech, my phone vibrated in my pocket. Jonah. You're being watched. Security spotted you near the AV booth earlier. Keep moving. I typed back, they think I'm staff. He replied, good. Stay that way. I circulated with the servers, topping glasses, smiling politely. Every so often, I caught glimpses of her, shaking hands, posing for photos, oblivious to the man a few feet away who'd once carried her through hospital corridors. Funny thing about betrayal, it doesn't age. It stays fresh, like a wound that refuses to clot. Then something unexpected happened. A woman from the hospital board, Dr. Lena Hargreaves, stepped onto the stage beside Marcus. Same surname as the plastic surgeon in Maris's notes. She announced a strategic partnership between their clinic and the charity. The room erupted in applause. I froze. That was the connection: medicine, money, charity, and Marcus in the middle. My ex-wife wasn't just his partner in love, she was his partner in the scheme. I whispered under my breath, "Got you." After the speeches, the real networking began. I slipped outside to the service corridor, my pulse steady. I needed proof, not guesses, not rumors. Proof that could shatter her carefully curated world. I found it in the trash. One of the assistants had tossed a shredded copy of the night's program. Among the scraps, a printed email header peeked out, from L. Hargreaves, to M. Lang, C. Walsh. Her initials. Her name. My ex-wife. I pocketed the piece like treasure. Back inside, I went through the motions, clearing plates, exchanging polite nods. I was minutes from leaving when fate decided to test my composure. She approached the table next to mine. Too close. Too sudden. "Excuse me," she said to a guest, setting her clutch on my tray without looking. Her perfume hit first, the same one that used to linger on my shirts. My throat tightened, but I kept my head down. Then she laughed. "Such a lovely event, isn't it?" "Yes, ma'am," I said quietly. My voice didn't even shake. She turned slightly, maybe sensing something familiar. For a split second, her eyes flicked toward me, then away. Recognition flirted with the edge of her mind but never landed. I was just a face in the service line. That was my power. When she walked away, I exhaled slowly, the way divers do when they surface too fast. Later that night, I met Jonah behind the hotel. Rain again, because fate has a sense of drama. I handed him the scrap. He scanned it with his phone. "That's her," he muttered. "They're mixing medical funds through a front. This is bigger than your marriage, Daniel. This is criminal." "I don't care if it's criminal," I said. "I care if it hurts." He stared at me. "You sure you want to use this? Once it's out, it's not just her. Everyone tied to it goes down. Even people who don't deserve it. Then they should have picked better company." He nodded, pocketed the paper. "I'll keep digging." Before he left, he added, "You're starting to sound like the men you used to hate." I didn't answer. Maybe because he was right. Maybe because I didn't care anymore. That night in my motel room, I rewatched the gala footage on my phone, the laughter, the applause, the smug faces clinking glasses over stolen money. I paused on her image, radiant, proud, untouchable. Then I overlaid it with the hospital receipts, the unpaid taxes, the fake invoices. Two versions of her stared back at me, the woman I saved and the woman who sold me. You know what's funny? Both of them smiled the same way. At 2 a.m., the burner phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text appeared. "You've done well. Step 2 is ready. Tomorrow, you meet the broker." No name. No details. Just coordinates and a time. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Whoever was guiding me was always one move ahead, feeding me crumbs that somehow led to whole meals of truth. I should have been afraid. But fear had long since turned into adrenaline. I told you before, revenge isn't rage. It's math. Tonight, the equation balanced in my favor. But balance is temporary. The more precise your mask, the easier it is to forget what's underneath. Tomorrow, I'd meet the broker. And that meeting would change everything. It was 3 p.m. sharp when I walked into the glass tower, one of those office buildings where silence costs more than rent. Everything there gleamed: polished floors, chrome elevators, fake smiles. I was wearing a suit borrowed from Jonah's friend, expensive enough to make me look like I belonged but tight enough to remind me I didn't. The receptionist didn't even look up when I said, "I'm here to see Mr. Hale." She just nodded, pressed a button, and said, "He's expecting you." That line. "He's expecting you." Like I'd been part of someone's plan long before I even agreed to play. The elevator doors slid open, revealing a room that looked more like a museum than an office: glass walls, abstract art, and a man standing by the window with his back to me. He didn't turn around when he spoke. "You're late." I wasn't aware we had a time. He turned then, mid-40s, silver hair, eyes that looked like they'd seen the worst in men and decided to make business out of it. "Mr. Walsh," he said, offering a hand. "Or do you prefer Daniel?" I didn't answer. I just shook his hand and said, "You're the broker." He smiled faintly. "That's what they call me. I connect people who have motives, with people who have means." "And what do you want with me?" He gestured toward the window overlooking the city. "You've been making noise, Daniel. Quiet noise, but still noise. You've touched systems you shouldn't have access to. You've traced money through paths that don't exist. That kind of curiosity either gets you killed, or employed." I crossed my arms. "Which one are you offering?" "That depends on how far you're willing to go for what you call revenge." He poured 2 glasses of whiskey and continued, "Marcus Lang and your ex-wife are about to finalize a merger that will expand their charity's medical front overseas. Billions in laundering potential. If it goes through, no one, not even the IRS, will ever trace it. But if we interrupt that transaction, make it implode from the inside, their empire collapses overnight." "And you want me to be the detonator," I said. He raised his glass. "You've already started. Whether you realize it or not." The way he said it made me pause. "What do you mean?" He pulled up a tablet and tapped the screen. My face appeared, security footage from the gala. Me near the AV booth. Me pocketing the shredded document. "You think you were invisible," he said softly. "You weren't. Someone noticed. Someone important. And that someone now believes you're working for us." "Us?" He smiled. "Let's just say, people with mutual interests in seeing Marcus Lang fall." My pulse quickened. "So I'm being used." He shrugged. "Aren't we all?" I should have walked out right then. But curiosity, it's a dangerous drug. Hale slid a folder across the table. Inside are details of an offshore account tied to Lang's company. You'll find one unusual transaction: $500,000 wired to a clinic in Singapore under your wife's name. The payment was made the week before your divorce was finalized. My chest tightened. "You're lying." He raised an eyebrow. "Check the timestamps yourself." I opened the file, and there it was, $500,000. Recipient, Clara Walsh. Purpose, medical advancement contribution. But the date. The date was 1 week before I sold my properties. She already had the money, I whispered. Before I destroyed myself for her, she already had it. Exactly, Hale said. She didn't need your sacrifice. You were just the perfect alibi. The pitiful husband. The noble fool. The distraction that made her image even more sympathetic. The room blurred around me. For the first time, I felt something beyond rage, something colder. A silence inside my chest that felt bottomless. Hale leaned forward. If you want to take them down, Daniel, I can give you everything, their accounts, their communications, even the passwords to the offshore funds. But you'll have to do something for me. What? Steal their future. He explained the plan. During the upcoming Medical Advancement Summit, Marcus would present the new charity merger to a network of global investors. Hale wanted me to plant falsified evidence, documents that made it look like Marcus was embezzling funds and hiding them offshore. The moment those files hit the network, Marcus would be finished. The board would cut him off, the authorities would swarm, and every digital trail would point to him. My ex-wife, as co-founder, would go down with him. A perfect collapse. I stared at the files. It sounded too clean, too perfect. Revenge never came without splatter. What happens to me when this is over? I asked. Hale smiled. You'll disappear. In every way that matters. He turned away, signaling the meeting was over. As I walked out, he said something that stuck with me long after the door shut. Remember, Daniel, revenge doesn't bring peace. It just teaches you how to aim better next time. That night, I sat in my motel, the files spread across the bed like evidence at a crime scene. I stared at her face in one of the attached photos, her smile during a press event, hand in Marcus's, the flash capturing everything false and perfect about them. $500,000. Before the treatment. Before my fall. It was never about love. It was about convenience. I was her story, the tragic husband who made her look like a saint. I took a long breath and whispered to myself, fine. Let's end her story with a twist. At exactly 11:59 p.m., I messaged Hale. I'm in. He replied instantly. Good. The summit is in 2 days. You'll receive your credentials at dawn. Then, after a pause, another message came through. Daniel, one more thing, don't trust anyone, not even me. That was the moment I realized revenge had a hierarchy. There was always someone higher, someone pulling strings from above the smoke. And I had just volunteered to be one of their pawns. But pawns have one advantage. They can reach the other side of the board. And become anything they want. The summit was coming. And with it, the fall of an empire. You ever wonder what it feels like, when revenge finally arrives? It's not fire. It's not fury. It's quiet, like the air right before a storm decides whether to destroy or pass you by. That morning, the world outside was calm. I wore a suit, pressed and sharp, the kind that smells like someone else's money. My fake badge read Consultant, Financial Oversight Division. My ticket into the Lion's Den, the Medical Advancement Summit. A year ago, I was begging doctors to save my wife. Now, I was walking into a skyscraper to destroy her. The summit hall was everything I expected, gold chandeliers, white suits, too much arrogance wrapped in polite applause. Marcus Lang stood at the center of it all, shaking hands like a man who believed he'd already won. My ex-wife, Clara, was beside him. Same flawless smile. Same cold eyes. Funny how someone can look so alive while standing over a grave, mine. I watched from the shadows, timing my movements with the rhythm of the event. Jonah had rigged the network access for me. Hale's files were stored in a flash drive tucked beneath my cufflink, a tiny, deadly piece of plastic that could rewrite history in seconds. All I had to do was plug it into the summit's presentation system before Marcus's keynote began. Simple. Clean. Final. At 10:12 a.m., I slipped into the control booth. My heart wasn't racing anymore. That scared me, the calmness. Maybe that's what happens when your purpose consumes the man inside you. I found the presentation laptop, inserted the drive, and watched as the transfer bar crawled across the screen. File transfer complete. In that moment, I thought of everything I'd lost, my home, my children, my name. And then I thought of her laugh. That cruel, careless laugh. It was time. Marcus took the stage, charming as ever. Today, he said, we expand our mission beyond borders. We give hope to millions. He clicked the remote. The screens behind him lit up, but not with his slides. Instead, the audience gasped. Transaction logs. Offshore transfers. Emails signed by Clara Walsh and Marcus Lang. Receipts linking medical funds to shell companies and private accounts. Every detail perfectly timed, perfectly damning. The crowd erupted into chaos. Reporters raised their phones. Board members shouted. Security scrambled toward the stage. Clara froze, her face pale, her mask cracking. She turned toward Marcus, whispering something sharp, desperate. He looked confused, betrayed, cornered. And me? I stood at the back, silent. Watching the empire I built for her collapse in real time. It should have felt like victory. It didn't. Because that's when I saw him. Hale. Standing in the VIP section, untouched by the panic, hands in his pockets, watching me. Smiling. I left the hall before the sirens came. Jonah was waiting outside in the car. It worked, he said. You did it. But I didn't answer. Something was wrong. I pulled out my phone, new message from Hale. Well done, Daniel. Phase 2 complete. You've cleared the board. Phase 2. Then it hit me. The fake documents, the ones I thought would expose Marcus, weren't entirely fake. They mixed truth with fabrication. The real money trail didn't end with Marcus or Clara. It went straight into Hale's network. He'd used me. I wasn't the detonator. I was the distraction. While the world tore Marcus and Clara apart, Hale's company acquired the very assets they'd lost, the clinics, the accounts, the offshore fronts. Revenge, it turned out, was just another form of acquisition. I confronted him that night. I knew where to find him, the glass tower, same office, same view. He didn't look surprised when I burst in. Daniel, he said calmly. I was wondering when you'd arrive. You used me, I growled. You let me burn them down just so you could steal what was left. He poured himself a drink, unbothered. You wanted revenge. I gave it to you. You destroyed them. You got your justice. Justice? I snapped. You turned me into you. He smiled faintly. No, Daniel. You turned yourself into me. There was silence. Just the hum of the city outside. You could have walked away, he continued. But you didn't. You wanted to hurt her. And now you have. Congratulations. He slid a folder toward me. Inside was a photo, Clara, handcuffed, being led away by federal agents. Marcus, face buried in his hands. It should have felt sweet. It tasted like ash. Hale raised his glass. Revenge achieved. I left without another word. Back at the motel, I sat on the bed where it all began. The walls were the same. The loneliness too. But something was different, me. Because once you burn your world to the ground, you start to realize the ashes cling harder than the fire ever did. The next morning, I packed my things. Left the room key on the table. As I stepped outside, the sun rose, bright, indifferent. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from Jonah. They're calling it the Walsh scandal. You're free now. Free. I laughed. A hollow, bitter laugh that sounded too much like hers. You want to know the truth? Revenge doesn't set you free. It just teaches you how to live in a cage you built yourself. But still, when I think about that night she laughed, that cruel, careless sound. I remember the silence that followed when the screens lit up. And that silence. That silence was worth everything. If you've ever been broken, used, or left behind, remember this. You don't have to fight like they do. You just have to be patient enough to let them build their own fire. And smart enough to hand them the match. And that was my story. A story of love, betrayal, and revenge that didn't just burn bridges, it turned them to dust. If you've ever been broken, if you've ever given everything to someone who left you in the dark, remember, silence is louder than screams, and revenge, well, revenge is best served patient. If this story hit you deep, if you felt every word, don't forget to like this video. Subscribe to the channel for more stories that'll twist your heart and chill your spine. Share it with someone who needs to remember what it means to rise from ashes. And drop a comment below, tell me, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Because sometimes, the scariest stories aren't fiction. They're just confessions.